Hello, I'm John with Roadkill Incorporated, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about the notorious iBook G3 video issue. Um, what this relates to is basically a defect in most of the iBook G3 laptops, uh, whereby the video chip, which is actually this guy right here, um, becomes removed from the logic board. And to the point where some of the solder connections in the chip, connecting the chip to the board, um, become loose, and it is then represented by distortion in the video, as you can see on this example machine. Um, the symptoms can be very subtle, anything from just slight fragmentation on the screen to a completely black screen, to the machine freezing, the pointer on the machine freezing. And the main way to tell if you have this issue is basically to press on the chip. And here's the shielding. You can see the outline of the chip, and then the board with the chip more exposed. And then here's another one where the coating, the rubbery coating has been removed. But anyway, the main determining method of figuring out whether you have the G3 video issue is to squeeze the chip. The chip is located right here. So if you use your hand like this and squeeze, and the display changes, if the display changes as a result of pressure on the chip, you know that you absolutely have the G3 video issue. And as you can see, when you clamp it, it basically connects those loose solder connections to the point where the machine begins to work. If you release pressure, those connections disconnect again, and the problem gets worse, as you can see. This is a fairly extreme example of the G3 video issue. Most examples of the problem are not this extreme. Do not give you the quite the pretty display of colors on the screen that you're experiencing, that you're witnessing right now. Like I said, most of the time it's a little more subtle. It's a freezing cursor. It's just a few lines on the screen that go away and come back. Another way to determine whether or not you have this is to connect your laptop to an external display. When you connect your machine to an external display, you're bypassing the onboard video hardware, not the chip, but the screen itself, the inverter cable, the video cable, all these other elements that sometimes have their own problems. So if you're seeing stuff on the screen, issues with video on the screen, if you connect your machine to an external video source, an external monitor, and you see the same problem on the screen, or you get no display at all, that's another good sign that the video chip is having issues. If you get a perfect display externally, yet on the computer you're seeing a messed up image or no image, that tends to point in the direction of the video hardware, not related to the chip, having a problem. The screen, the inverter cable, the video cable, that kind of thing. So anyway, just wanted to do a little overview of that. There's not really a satisfying way to fix this problem. There are a lot of people out there who will talk all day about how good they are at fixing the G3 video issue, but at the end of the day, I've really never witnessed anyone's work that proved to me they really knew what they were doing, unfortunately. There are two primary methods of quote-unquote fixing this. The first is referred to as the Shim method. And what that entails, basically, is putting something on top of here. And when you put something on top of the chip, it creates pressure between the chip and the bottom casing of the computer. So you're basically giving the computer a permanent clamp. Some people use those little rubber feet that go like underneath the corners of stereo equipment, like 2 millimeter thick rubber feet. One thing I tried that worked reasonably well is to take aluminum foil and fold it up into a square, roughly resembling this square, and just keep folding it until you get something a couple millimeters thick, and then just tape it on. It's important to use metal because you don't want to put, say, cardboard in there and provide some and potentially cause a fire hazard. So there's the Shim method. It tends to work briefly, maybe several days or a couple weeks, but the computer kind of gets used to the pressure, so to speak, and requires more pressure, and eventually it wears itself out, and the issue comes back again. That's sort of another classic display of the issue. If you see, sort of lines along the side. The other method is the blowtorch method, or the heat gun method. What people do in that instance is, as you can see here, the sort of yellow rubbery stuff has been scraped off because you don't want to use a heat gun on it with that on. It'll just melt it all over the place. And then you apply a heat gun to this chip. There are a million theories as to how long you should leave it on the chip and on what setting. A lot of people say, like, do it for 1.5 minutes on low and then 30 seconds on high. A lot of people will take the shielding and cut out the square in a scrap piece of shielding, and then temporarily put that over this so that only the chip is exposed, and then they'll use the heat gun on the chip so that the rest of the board here does not get affected. That's a fairly good method, I would say. When the chip is hot, it has a tendency to slide, and so it's important to not touch it, because if it slides, then you're done. It's toast. There's no going back. Some people have reported success with taking a heat sink, like a heat sink that goes on a processor chip, and putting it on the chip, and then heating the heat sink instead of the chip itself. So people claim that by doing it that way, the heat the heat goes onto the chip more evenly than if you take the heat gun straight onto the chip. But like I said, I've seen examples of all of these methods having been done, and it seems that inevitably the symptoms come back. There is a permanent method, an actual real method of doing this, which is to replace the chip. There's a method of heating up the chip, removing the chip, removing all of the solder from underneath the chip, and then replacing the solder, putting the chip back on, and mounting it back in place. But this requires a very expensive device, generally called a rework station, which is basically a giant multi-$1,000 device that's sole purpose is for installing chips on boards, and it's obviously it's hard to justify a $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 device for the purpose of repairing 10-year-old computers. Although those devices are usable for MacBook Pros with the video issue, Xbox 360s that have I think it's called, the red ring of death or something like that. So, if this is something you're really into, and, you could use it for other platforms as well, a rework station might be something in your future. So anyway, wanted to just give a little overview of the G3 video issue. It's taken me, I guess you could say, a couple of years to really gather up all the information I've told you. I just wanted to bundle it up in a nice little summary and do a video. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.